Welcome to the 480 podcast. I'm Jacob Fredericks, and today we're going to be discussing the Arizona Cardinals roster going into the 2024 season and a matchup preview against the Buffalo Bills this week. So, to kick us off, we're just going to start with the Cardinals offense. Starting at quarterback, Kyler Murray. I think Murray this season has to prove something. He's had a steady 2 seasons after winning Rookie of the Year the year before. He's got to shine this season for this offense to be successful. And then his weapons also have to shine there. So to start at running back, coming off that first 1,000-yard season, James Conner. James Conner, I think, is going to have an impeccable season. Especially, they're going to rely on, they have to be able to run the football with James Conner. Kyler Murray cannot be the only option. He have to be able to run the football with James Conner like they did last season. And when they did it last season, they were very successful. If you look at the game against the Eagles, the Steelers, the Cowboys, they ran the ball with Conner and they were very successful. Along with backing up Conner will be Trey Benson. And Trey Benson, I think, is going to be a great third down back. He's good out of the backfield. I think we're going to utilize him in a lot of screen passes, a lot of angle routes, and I think that's going to help him a lot. Moving forward to the most important position group, I think, for this team this season is their wide receiver group. This is the group that I think struggled the most last season and was a reason why the Cardinals went 4 and 13. So, to start off, the Cardinals drafted the best wide receiver in the draft, probably one of the best receiving prospects I think we've seen almost ever coming out of the draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. Complete package, speed down the sideline, ability to just go up and get it, physical receiver. This is a guy that had 1,200 yards with Kyle McCord as his quarterback at Ohio State, which, I mean, he's not an NFL prospect at all. I think Kyle McCord is a fine quarterback in college, but there's no way he's an NFL prospect. So to be able to get 1,200 yards with McCord as a quarterback, imagine what he's going to do with a quarterback going into his 4th year here. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. could be the next Larry Fitzgerald, because he's that deep threat receiver, averaging about 18.1 yards per reception in college. But he can also go up. He can go up and get it. He's a physical receiver. The only thing that I think we need to really see from him that I think is maybe a little bit questionable is his ability to get separation with those defenders. I didn't see it enough in college, especially in the big games against Michigan or Missouri. I didn't see him get that separation from the corners, and I think could be a problem for him. But other than that, Marvin Harrison Jr., complete package, automatically improves that wide receiver room by 10 times. And then we're going to go to Greg Dortch, who's honestly last season had a complete drop-off from his previous season, getting about 200 yards less. Part of that was in the first 9 games, he just didn't get the targets. The targets just weren't there, and he didn't get almost any catches in his first 9 games. After that, he was solid, but never really broke out. And I think that's what we need to see from him going into this next season. I think this is really his make or break year. If he doesn't do well, I think this will be his last season as an Arizona Cardinal. But if he does well, I think we could see him as our number 2, number 3 receiver for a long time. Then, the surprise from last season, Michael Wilson. I think Michael Wilson is going to have a really, really good season this year after having 500 yards last year as a very pleasant surprise as a rookie. No one really heard about him until after training camp. But when he stepped into that lineup, he produced. Receptions. He got 3 touchdowns last season. I think he's going to be very, very good. And I think he's going to be the wide receiver too until at least Zay Jones comes back after his suspension. Speaking of Zay Jones, we're going to move on to Zay Jones. He is suspended for the first 5 games, but his last full season he had about 800 yards. 800 yards with the Las Vegas Raiders. That is a very good season for a bad team. The Raiders have not been a very good team through the air in a long time. And I think having 800 yards for that team is a very good feat. I think it is concerning that he is suspended for the first 5 games, but everything I've heard from him, from camp, from the coaches, is that they're liking what they see from Zay Jones. So after that 5-game suspension, hopefully he hits the ground running, and I think that Zay Jones is going to be a big problem for other teams' defenses. Then we got the rookie Xavier Weaver, who I thought watching him in college honestly could have been like a 5th, 6th, 7th round draft pick, but he went undrafted due to his injury problems. However, However, he's a great route runner, and he's a very big deep threat. You saw that in preseason, especially against the Broncos. He had that one 45-yard catch from Clayton Tune. He just threw it and went up to get it. I think Xavier with speed, as long as he's healthy, could be a solid option to just kind of throw in there to give some rest to Dortch or Wilson. And finally, to wrap up the receiving core, we got Chris Moore, who hasn't really ever broken out since he got drafted in 2016. He's been that solid third, fourth receiver that kind of plays in. He went to Tennessee. He was in Baltimore for a few years, never really did too much. And he was in Tennessee 2 years ago and had a pretty decent season, had about 500 yards. And then last season he went to Houston, had about 400 yards. But I thought when you did see him on the field, there was a lot of production there from him. And I think you're going to see a very good season from him if he plays this season. Then I think the best player on the entire receiving core of all of Kyler Murray's weapons, it's Trey McBride. 823 yards. He was drafted as a blocking tight end, and he's really transformed himself into the receiving tight end. 823 yards, especially with a short quarterback like Kyler. I know people want to talk about his height, and it is important. He's a quarterback in the NFL. Your height and your size is important. I think Murray can be a very, very successful quarterback for this team, but your size is important. And what do small quarterbacks like? They love a good tight end. I think having a good tight end like Trey McBride, I think McBride's going to be having a 1,000-yard season this year. I see McBride as that next Travis Kelce. I think McBride at this point in his career is better than what Travis Kelce was, because McBride also adds the blocking game. When we run the ball with James Conner, our offensive line is going to block, but we're going to need our tight end to block to get him on the outside there into space. And I think McBride is probably one of the best blocking tight ends in the National Football League, period. And then to a position that there's been some question marks for the last few years, especially with the quarterback that has been injury prone, our offensive line has to be good. If this offensive line is not good, they will not be a successful team this year. This offensive line has to protect. They did have some good additions. They had added Paris Johnson in the draft. I think that is a huge addition for them. I think Murray's blindside has to be protected, and I think this year is going to be better. Because what we saw a lot from Kyler when he struggled, especially like in the playoffs against the Rams, or in that season when they had that struggle, when they struggled before the playoffs, was that he had to roll out a lot, he had to extend plays, and then he had to throw off his back foot. And that led to a lot of turnovers, a lot of incompletions, a lot of big sacks that cost us downs and field goals and things like that. And that's not good. So our O-line has to be solid, and I think Paris Johnson's going to help with that. I think Jonah Williams is a questionable addition to me. I think getting him from the Bengals, whose offensive line has been notoriously bad in the last 4 years, the Bengals getting to the Super Bowl is just a mystery to me because of how poor their O-line is. Joe Burrow is under pressure on every throw he has. So I think bringing someone in from a very poor O-line just isn't to me what we should be looking at. But I think bringing in a guy who's talented, I think it's a good thing because we need some help on the O-line. And then Will Hernandez, I think, is still a question mark on this O-line. We brought him in from New York, I believe, and he just hasn't quite performed yet for the Cardinals, but I think I think this year he's going to have a good year, a solid year, and he's going to earn his spot as a true starter in the National Football League. And then moving on onto the defensive side of the ball, the Cardinals D-line, especially that interior D-line, very big question mark. That is the spot that is the weak point, I think, on this team in general, that still needs work, and I think it's not going to be fixed this season. I think it's going to take next season, the season after that, with free agency and the draft. I think the draft is going to be a big point where we're going to have to get an interior defensive lineman. We did draft Darius Robinson. However, he's out for a while. It could be 8 games, up to 8 games he's out for. We drafted him, I believe, to move him inside, although he played end at Missouri. But I think we're going to need more help than just a rookie who's going to be out for 8 games. So I think this year the interior defensive line has a lot to prove, and I think they're going to struggle a little bit this year. However, on the outside linebacker, they got Zaven Collins, a second or third year linebacker who started off as a middle linebacker, really good tackler, had 100 tackles his first year in the NFL. I think last year they moved him over to outside linebacker or defensive end, and I thought he was decently successful. I think he only had 1.5 sacks. I would like to see him get to the quarterback more. I think he's more of a guy where I look at him as a coverage tackle linebacker rather than a go after the quarterback linebacker. But we'll see how that one pans out for them. but I think he's still showing great things. And then moving on to the linebackers, to the inside linebackers, we still got Dennis Gardeck, who can move to outside linebacker and go after the quarterback. He's a guy that has to step up on this defense. We have to be able to get to quarterbacks. Otherwise, our secondary, especially a young secondary, will struggle. Kaiser White in the middle, some good just experience in that middle of the defense. I think he's going to bring a lot. Hopefully, he can emerge as a leader on this defense and really step up, help this defense be a really, really good defense under Jonathan Gannon. And Mack Wilson, also solid in the linebacker there, just experience, something that Jonathan Gannon really likes. Jonathan Gannon, we know, is a defensive coach, and I think that's going to really benefit him. And then I do worry about a rookie cornerback, Max Melton. He was pretty good in college, played for Houston. I don't know about a rookie corner in the NFL, especially since our last rookie corner, Marco Wilson, didn't work out for us very well. He got burnt a lot last season. We gave up a lot of deep passes because of our secondary, and so I think our secondary still needs some work. Although bringing in Sean Murphy-Bunting was a very, very good signing, and that's going to help this defense on the experience side a lot. And I think he's going to really emerge as a leader in this defense. And then Budda Baker, we need Budda Baker to consistently step up and be the guy on this defense. Hard hitting, good reading safety. He's not Cam Chancellor, but he's still he's not Ed Reed, but he's still a very, very good safety who I think has to step up this season and really, really demand more from that defense. If Budda Baker steps up as not only a free safety, but can step up as a strong safety and really help in the run game, this Cardinals defense is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I could see this Cardinals team being a very, very successful team going into next season, which is when I think that this team is ready for that push to be a contender. And special teams, just to quickly touch on that. Matt Prater. I think Matt Prater is still Matt Prater. He can still kick from 50-plus yards. I still think we rely on him a lot in this season. We're going to have to get points. And I think getting points from a kicker who's not a guaranteed to make it, as we saw in week 18 last year, but a very, very good kicker who's been consistently one of the best in the NFL. I think keeping him on this roster was a very, very smart move. And I think he's going to be a very important role for the Cardinals this year. And for Jonathan Gannon, I think this is a prove-it year for him to prove that what he set up last year is continuing onto this year. I look at Jonathan Gannon as similar to the situation as I look at Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, where he had a team that was in absolute shambles when he took it over, and he had to bring it back. A team that was not very talented at all, but a team that fought in every game, was close with better teams, and even beat three of their wins were against playoff teams and top playoff teams too. So I think that what JG was building last year is going to translate to this year, but I think this is a prove-it year for him to prove that what he's building is actually working. And then now to just discuss the matchup this week against the Buffalo Bills. I actually see the Cardinals having a very good week this week against the Bills. I think the receiving corps is going to have a good week this week. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to step up and cook that defense there. And Kyler Murray, I think, is starting his prove-it season. I think Kyler Murray wants to prove it. He wants to prove that he's worth that big contract that we gave him. And so I think we're going to rely on James Conner a lot this week, especially going into Buffalo. Just rely on the run game, get it set up, and then get Murray set up with that play action. Give him time to throw. If he has time to throw, this team is going to get a lot of yards to the air. And then on the defensive side, we all know what Josh Allen brings for the Bills. It's going to be a struggle to keep him. We have to have someone spying on him constantly. He's a very good runner. We didn't really see it in his first year in Buffalo, but in the last couple years, he's emerged himself as a top QB runner, not named Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts or Kyler Murray. He is a very good runner, and I think we have to have someone spying on him. I think the Cardinals secondary actually has a good week for them this week because they're facing a very inexperienced Bills receiving corps. Keon Coleman a rookie, is going to be their number one receiver. And Dalton Kincaid, probably their number two. So I think the Cardinals actually have a very, very good chance to win this week. And this season, I think, is going to be a very, very good season for the Cardinals. I could see the Cardinals competing for that last wildcard spot. Like I'm looking at a 10-7, 9-8 season for the Cardinals. I think at worst, they're going to be just as bad as they were last year. But I think what the range we're looking at is a 7 to 10 win season this year. And so I think the Cardinals are continue on their improvement going into next year, in which I think they're going to compete for a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. So that wraps up today's episode. Thank you for listening to the 480 podcast. I'm Jacob Fredericks. I'll see you guys next time.